Welcome to Resilience and Resolve with Lance Drury.
Welcome to Resilience and Resolve with attorney Lance Drury. For nearly 2 decades, Lance has represented clients in tax disputes and grown his practice across multiple offices. I'm Leanne Lyon, and today we're talking about what it really takes to serve clients in different states. From staffing to compliance, it's a bigger challenge than most attorneys expect, but it can also open doors to lasting growth. Hello, Lance.
Good morning, Leanne. How are you today?
I'm so good. It's wonderful. So, Lance, when you first expanded beyond Missouri, what motivated you to open offices in other states?
Well, I was talking to my media guy one day. He negotiates all my radio contracts and he does the scripts, which I will review and amend from time to time. And I said, I'm looking to get into another area. I wanted to, to grow. I wanted to keep growing the practice. I wanted to help more people. So he said, let me take a look at this. I'll see what the radio costs. So he looked into Kansas City and Indianapolis and Nashville. And I didn't know at the time how big Nashville was. It was bigger than what I thought. And he came back to me and he says, you need to go to Nashville. The radio's going to cost more than in Kansas City or Indianapolis, but there's more money down there. And so there's higher liability tax resolution cases, and we charge depending upon how much people owe, because the more they owe, the more aggressive the IRS gets, the more time it takes. So that's why we went to Nashville. It's like a 4.5 hour drive from St. Genevieve, which is where I'm stationed. And so it was just, I wanted to move out. And so I would go down every 3 or 4 weeks, rent out of Regis, rent the room for the day, meet all these people, and then I'd bring the cases back until finally we got enough business down there that I could afford to hire an attorney. He worked out of the Regis. And then when we needed a legal assistant and another attorney, we got our own office lease down there in the same building. And so now we're spread out not only in Nashville, but in San Antonio. And now we're starting in Houston, Texas. And so that's what always has motivated me, because I want to help as many people as possible. I tell my legal assistants, you have a moral obligation to help as many people as possible. We were given these talents to help these people out. It's a very demanding practice. Nobody wants to deal with the IRS. And so that's why we want to grow.
I love your heart of service. That matters so much. What would you say is the biggest difference between serving clients locally and running a practice across multiple locations?
Well, it's a good question. It's certainly, we can help more people out this way because we're in a niche area. Maybe 1% or less of attorneys want to do this work. In small town, you have all this competition for criminal defense, DWI work, family law, but this is a niche. And so you can command higher fees because there's not really any competition. Like in St. Louis, I'm the only local attorney that advertises on the radio that I know. Now, those big tax resolution firms, they advertise on the radio during tax season. They'll come in January the 1st and they'll leave April 15th. Well, we're on there year round. We're never going to leave, because you don't want to get off the radio for a while because it takes that much longer to build the practice back up. So, and we want to know that, we're there to help them year round. And so, that's one of the biggest things that we do that keeps the firm moving forward.
I really appreciate that you are an attorney and at the same time you have the vision of an entrepreneur, because starting and stopping your marketing is absolutely, it can be devastating for building client trust. But, when you're serving so many states and so many places, how do you make sure that clients in different states get all the same level of service and attention?
Well, that's because we monitor the cases. I personally monitor them. Every morning, I sit down with my legal assistants and my attorneys, and we'll probably go through 100 cases each and every day. So, and I see where we're at, where the log jam is, because I want to make sure that an attorney has been in touch with those people once every 30 days, because the biggest complaint that clients make to the various bar associations is my lawyer's not communicating with me. I haven't heard from my lawyer in a long time. So client communication is critical. We want to stay in touch with them at least once a month, even if there's nothing going on with the case. So that's how I do it. I trust them with the case, but you know what Ronald Reagan say, trust but verify. And so we do that. So we go in and there's a centralized case system where I can go in and monitor all that.
Yes, communication is indeed king. And yet there's also compliance to consider. How do you stay on top of compliance when state rules and regulations differ and often change?
Well, the one good thing is in Tennessee and Texas, they don't have a state income tax. So we don't have to worry about preparing state income tax returns in those two states. What we do is we check with the various bar associations in each state to make sure that we're complying with their regulations. The one thing is that we have to do is we have to have a separate bank account in each state, because the state bars are going to require that if wherever you got the money from, for example, in Texas, if it's a Texas client, he paid you, you better have that money in a Texas bank account so that they can access it easier. And so that's one of the things, but we stay up on those compliance issues with the various state bars, and we'll continue to do that in the future. Now, the good thing, Leanne, is this: we can practice across the whole United States because the IRS is federal. So the rules of the game are the same regardless of where the client lives. So we get people out of California, Louisiana, Florida, New York, and we can do that because we're not having to keep up with a different set of rules because the IRS is federal.
Excellent point. Back to communication, communication is critical in any firm. How do you keep your team connected across offices?
Well, we have an intercom system. So even though Jordan's in Orlando, Florida, and Matthew's in Nashville, Tennessee, and Amir is in San Antonio, Texas, we can communicate that way. And then, everybody has to use the centralized case system. And, we'll send out various emails this morning. Jordan told me something about how to get statements of account from the Missouri Department of Revenue. They're very hesitant to do that. So I said, you need to advise Amir and Vala by email as to what you're doing, because, they've been telling me they can't get those state of accounts with the state of Missouri Department of Revenue. So, we do that all the time. And Leanne, I know this surprises you, but we have happy hours here from time to time. I take all the legal assistants out. Last night, we took everybody out at 4 o'clock, and Max, the attorney, the only other attorney, went up to the Anvil restaurant, and they had, you know, cocktails and they had appetizers. And we do that once a month, twice a month. And so we want to do that so that we're all on the same page. And it's great for morale as well.
Absolutely. One thing I've admired talking with you is how much you emphasize culture and being really there for your people, because if you're there for them, then they're going to be there for your clients as well. I think it's just lovely.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, this was several years ago, and Donna, who's been with me forever, her husband got ill. He had cancer, and
Oh,
so she was gone for about 2 or 3 months. And these big firms, big corporations probably would not have allowed that, but we did it, and I continued to pay her because she was well worth it. She's been very good here, and everybody stepped up their game while she was gone. And so everybody knows that. They know that I'm going to be there if they have any needs with their immediate family, whether it's their parents or not. And we just do that because I think that's important for people. And when you live in a small town, it's easier to do that, I think, because everybody lives so close to each other. But I think that's really gone a long ways in getting people here that are good and that want to stay here.
yeah. Again, just an amazing culture that you developed. We're going to wrap up here fairly soon, but I have a couple more questions. Have you found advantages to having offices in different regions, whether for the clients, for hiring, for credibility? What advantages have you found?
Well, that's a great question. I guess the biggest thing is from now on that I've learned is, when I was just relegated to St. Louis and Nashville, I would just advertise locally for attorneys. And St. Louis was very difficult to get people to come here. So it worked out well because, we didn't have as many clients in Nashville. We still don't. St. Louis probably does 2 to 3 times as many clients as Nashville or more, but people wanted to go to Nashville to work. And so Nashville does a lot of Missouri cases because the Missouri office isn't equipped to handle all of those cases itself. So that helped me grow immensely because people wanted to go to Nashville to work, but we had all these clients from Missouri. But now moving forward, because I've found that I'm comfortable with remote workers and I use a headhunter and he's expensive, but I've gotten such great people with that headhunter that I'm going to go back there again. And, I would think that the day will come and we'll get somebody, even though it's a virtual office, who can be uh, local in Houston because the population of Houston, the metropolitan area is as big as St. Louis, Nashville, and San Antonio combined. And we have 5 days a month. We can use that office for free in Houston. So if a client wants to come and meet with him, they can still do it. And we still got the low overhead for the office. So you learn, you got to learn, you got to be able, I tell people you can teach an old dog new tricks, and I'm living proof of that.
I love it. Well, for attorneys that are listening who are thinking about expanding, and obviously the remote ability that we have now is key to them thinking about that. But what is one step that they should take before opening a second location?
Well, you certainly want to be successful with the first because it's going to take a while, especially if you're going to do a brick and mortar. It's going to take a while for that second location to be successful. So, probably what I would advise them to do is to do a virtual office first, and then they can examine whether they want to do a brick and mortar down the road. I'm not going to do any more brick and mortars, but we're certainly going to keep expanding and we're still going to provide the same high quality of service to our clientele.
Beautiful. Well, one last question before we wrap up for today. What is the biggest payoff and the toughest challenge of running a multi office practice?
Well, the biggest payoff is you can help more people. You can help more. I can. It's great that I can help as many people as I can have a good job with great benefits, with a family atmosphere here. I really take a lot of pride in that. It's going to be more profitable in the long run for me. And I'm able to do more for people and organizations. I could retire. I don't need the money. But, I tell everybody, I can't help out Joe Blow with his medical bills or help out a historical organization here in St. Genevieve because it's a very historic place if I didn't make as much money as I did. So I take a lot of pride in that. It gives me a lot of satisfaction. It makes me happy to be able to do that. And I probably would not do that as much if I was retired. So those are the payoffs. The toughest challenge is, I guess, that you're not there to see what's going on every single day. That's why we have these other systems in place. Sometimes you don't make the right hire. I've had attorneys that didn't work out. I've had enrolled agents that didn't work out. But we're getting to a place where I think we're providing the best level of service we've ever had. And that's only going to continue because I'm going to start using that headhunter. And I've had great people in my experience with him.
Yeah. And, it really comes down to ROI, and often letting somebody else who's really excellent at what they're doing, like you are, is the best way to get the best ROI. Wonderful. Thanks for listening to Resilience and Resolve with Lance Drury. For more resources or to connect with Lance directly, visit lancedrurylaw.com and be sure to like, leave a review, and subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. Thank you, Lance.
Thank you, Leanne. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.